The following recording is a production of Kickin' Out at 2 in conjunction with the Retromania Pro Wrestling Podcast Network and is intended for private use only. For more information, head on over to facebook.com/Kickin' Out at 2 or our Twitter handle @Kickin' Out 2, along with searching Retromania with a W on any and all podcast platforms available to listen to archive shows such as this and all the great content of the Retromania Pro Wrestling Podcast Network. Evergreen content at your fingertips anytime at your listening pleasure. And with that being said, we thank you for listening and hope you enjoy the show.
It is our summer outdoor wrestling theme here on Kickin' Out at 2. I'm Dave Rosenbluth. I'm here with my brother Justin, and we are going to be going back and covering some of the more infamous outdoor wrestling events in wrestling history this summer. First one we're going to be doing is a watch-along of the July 8th, 1996 episode of WCW Monday Nitro that emanated from the Disney MGM studios. I think it was the parking lot, if I'm not mistaken. They had a makeshift arena set up, and they ran Nitro for about a month or so there. And this particular episode is the first one they did there, which happened to be the night after Bash at the Beach 1996, the infamous Hulk Hogan heel turn and forming the NWO with the Outsiders, Hall and Nash. This on the Peacock is Season 2, Episode 26, goes 1 hour and 32 minutes. As usual, I'll give you guys a cue, press play, I'll put the audio up, I'll tell you when to turn the audio down, timestamp, the whole 9 yards. But before we get into that, welcome back.
Yeah, no, I'm glad to be here. I think this, I was just looking at because you have it pulled up on the screen here, it's the 26th episode of Season 2, which makes it the literal half point of the calendar year in a 52-week year. And I don't know, part of me was thinking about like what other things were happening in the wrestling world in this time, what would come after this. A pretty wild, I don't want to say historic, but certainly a moment in time, especially this episode that we're about to watch, knowing what we obviously saw unfold moving forward in the wrestling world in general.
Yeah.
This is, one thing that was also happening during this time, or at least shortly thereafter, was a Rosenbluth family vacation to Disney World. There is a picture lurking around of you, me, and Daryl standing outside the fan entrance to this very arena on an empty day while we were at that Disney park in particular, which is now called Disney Hollywood. Really?
Yeah. That's right. You work for Disney.
It's the third part. It's just the third park.
Work for
that's
ESPN,
down there.
but yeah.
There's United Kingdom, Magic Kingdom. There's
Epcot.
Experiential prototypical World of Tomorrow or whatever it's called. It's an acronym, Epcot. I should probably know that. And then, of course, again, Disney Hollywood, which was once called Disney MGM. So it's kind of like of the parks, it's like a lot of the different movies and the more cinematic
aspect of
titles.
Yeah.
Find homes in that park. Like I believe Star Wars has their rides and experiences there now. And
I've been to Disney in over 15 years. So
I
can't. I couldn't tell you what's what.
Yeah, I don't either. I have not a clue. I know I went a few years ago before I graduated college for just a brief day, and it wasn't really anything immersive. Like, when we went again during this exact time frame in 1996, we were kind of like in and out.
So let's provide a little context here. I'm not sure if you remember this, but I do. We left, so we did a summer vacation in Florida. Our grandparents lived in Fort Lauderdale at the time, and then we took the drive from Fort Lauderdale to Orlando to spend pretty much a week at Disney. Mom and Dad did they robbed Peter to pay Paul to get all of us to go to Disney, all four of us Rosenbluth boys, and I can only imagine what they had to go through to make that trip happen. I would imagine our grandparents probably helped them a little bit, but who knows? Yeah. I don't have specifics. But anyways, we were at Disney, so we went to Nana and Grandpa's, drove to Disney, and then we spent a week at Disney. So that picture that was taken took place either the day or 2 days before this Nitro. So
I thought we went to Nitro. I thought we went to Disney after this Nitro.
No, we did not.
Okay, because I remember being told about what happened at Bash at the Beach
We were
still with our grandparents.
Well, we were with our grandparents. So we went to Disney before. So we went to Disney before this Nitro. I think we got back like either the night before, back to Nana and Grandpa's, or the day of Bash at the Beach, because I remember you said that I told you what took place. I remember watching this episode of Nitro in Nana and Grandpa's bedroom while they were on the back porch with Mom and Dad, and you guys were playing in the other room.
Okay.
Or maybe you were asleep. You probably had a bed. You guys. I was 12 at the time, 12 or 13.
7.
So you were 6. Yeah. So Mom and Dad probably put you to bed at a respectable hour. But I remember sitting on the bed, and I might have told this story before, but I'll just share it with you just to provide some context because it's pertaining to the opening of this episode. So the episode opens, okay, and I'm just paraphrasing here, but Tony Schiavone basically says, last night, ladies and gentlemen, we witnessed the blackest day in the history of professional wrestling. And he's got this big lead up and this big build up to what that was pertaining to. And I'm sitting on the bed by myself, and I just said this out loud, not thinking that this was happening, not thinking that this did happen, not having any kind of prediction, but like it was just me being like, well, did Hulk Hogan turn bad, or did Hulk Hogan become a bad guy?
And
then when he said it, that Hulk Hogan joined the Outsiders and and invaded and has turned his back on WCW, and I was like, huh?
They finally did it.
And then I ran into the other room and told our father, and said, Dad, they're making Hulk Hogan a bad guy. And he was like, nah. And I said, yeah. And then I ran back into the room to, watch the rest of Nitro. And I watched that whole episode. I don't even think I watched Raw that night. I watched that whole episode just so I could, because they had hyped up that they were going to show the still photos of Hogan appearing at Bash at the Beach and turning on WCW, and that's what I think they eventually ended the program with. So we're going to watch this episode back with all of you, and I'll actually play the audio of at the beginning of Schiavone's opening monologue with Larry Zbyszko at the announcers table. We'll talk some outdoor wrestling events. We'll talk about more recently the Who Killed WCW docuseries that we've been watching on Vice. And, whatever pops up on the screen, we'll talk about. So without further ado, I'm going to press play. I'll give you guys a cue and a timestamp. But hopefully your Peacock is set up. Season 2, Episode 26, 1 hour and 32 minutes. As I get this thing all queued up and ready to go. Let me see here. It's being an asshole. 3 seconds here. So, all right. So in 3, 2, 1, hit play with the infamous opening of Monday Nitro, which was filmed on the Disney MGM studio lot, if I'm not mistaken, from what I have been told, from what I've heard. Listened to on Eric Bischoff's 83-week podcast, but this is what I love the Nitro Open.
Oh, it's like it's a whole, like, you had to be there.
Yeah, yeah.
I know that's kind of like the thing that people say now, but you really had to be there. It was going down when that came on.
Yeah. It's makeshift arena here. It's Tony Schiavone. I'll play the audio with Larry Zbyszko.
commenting on right now?
Well, we'll be talking about during the course of the program, and remember, in the second hour, the pictures will tell the story of what Hulk Hogan did last night. We began the program last night in great fashion as we had Rey Mysterio Jr. Let's take a look at some.
All right, I'm gonna kill the audio there as we're continuing to watch. But yeah, I literally ran from Nana and Grandpa's bedroom to Dad in the living room, and in shock and disbelief, Hulk Hogan turning bad. But me personally, while we on the subject here of outdoor wrestling events, I love the little arena that they had set up there.
Absolutely.
I think that just looks so cool. It may have like an indie vibe look to it, but like it just.
I don't think so. But I see what you mean. It's smaller.
It's
but
smaller,
I wouldn't say
yeah.
it has an indie vibe. I think it's got a sleek, clean look to it.
The bleachers they have set up there with the lights
cool.
and everything. Yeah, I just think it looks so cool. As we see Rey Mysterio come out, he's going to wrestle Dean Malenko. I believe this is for the Cruiserweight Championship, if I'm not mistaken. A very young-looking Rey Mysterio there.
Bursting on the scene
Yep.
in the last few months, year. They're kind of coming from ECW and kind of bringing over that now all too common style of wrestling. But for 1996,
Lucha Libre.
Yeah, just the
fast-paced,
high energy, risk taking, very spot fest would be another phrase people I think use a lot related to it. That's kind of what this was the beginnings of in terms of its introduction and integration into American wrestling, because again, that's not what American wrestling commonly featured at this point up until this time.
Yeah, it's definitely inspired, and like you said, it's pretty much a predominant style in today's wrestling, at least in certain promotions, AEW being one of them. Now, have you caught any of that speed concept on Twitter or on X?
I have not watched it. No.
Okay.
I can't,
because that was my first thought, that like it was just going to be another way to present the cruiserweight division. But then when they put like a time limit on it, you got to wrestle 3 minutes, and there were guys with different looks and different styles. Like I think they had like Ivar from the Viking Raiders in one of those matches, and they had more bigger guys. I was like, oh, maybe I'll check this out. This seems like it's not just they haven't like handcuffed themselves to a cruiserweight smaller wrestler style.
Well, I like that, because I don't think it's because the rosters are so diverse, and the makeup of people who would benefit from an opportunity like that isn't just exclusive to like what you see here, like the smaller, more athletic types. Mm-hmm. So kind of having that version of it with the Speed Championship, I think is good. I think we as a fan base have a hard time reconciling that as an opportunity, which is what it is. People look at it as a step down. When the Cruiserweight title returned with 205 Live and the Cruiserweight Classic, like people at first were like, this is going to be so cool. Like we're going to have this brand of wrestling on our shows. It's going to be just like Nitro. A lot of people were kind of trying to make that comparison. But then once it kind of materialized itself into what it became, people looked at it like it was like Velocity or Heat.
Yeah.
Or, just this is what they do with you when they don't have anything for you to do.
Yeah, they put you on the secondary show. Yeah.
Like when you win, when someone would win a cruiserweight title, and even with the Speed Championship, if you were that champion, it's like, oh, like you're getting a demotion. Where it's like, no, man, that matter. Like that stuff does matter. It's just got to make it matter more.
Yeah.
So I think we have to find a way to reorient our thinking to appreciate the opportunity that these things and these different specialized segments, matches, etc., do for the wrestlers.
One thing I've noticed over the years, when everyone has beaten that story to death about WCW and the downfall, one of the things that gets talked about is that like it wasn't a place for younger guys to get opportunity, but I think that's a gigantic misconception when it comes to like what we're watching here with Malenko and Rey Mysterio. they were relatively new on a national stage, and they're on national TV for a gigantic organization that houses the likes of a Hulk Hogan, a Randy Savage, a Sting, a Ric Flair, and they're being on the same show with those guys. And I wouldn't say they were unknowns in ECW and on a smaller scale, but this is the first time they're really wrestling on a national stage. Not this particular match, but during this time period, and I wouldn't call that, like you said, a demotion, and that's one of the things that I don't think Bischoff gets enough credit for. Is guys are going into commercial break, but he doesn't get enough credit for making the cruiserweight presentation mean something and matter.
Right.
Like, it was an important staple of these early Nitro shows, whether they opened or whether you put it on in like a quarter hour where you needed to pop a rating or whatever. Those cruiserweight matches all had some importance to them on the show.
I mean, in the big scheme of things, yeah. I think maybe in the specifics of what the match meant, the stakes involved, probably there was less of those. Having said that, it's important to also remember, like, all opportunities aren't created equal. So if your opportunity is to go out there and just have a banger of a match, go out there and have a banger of a match.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Go out there and show everybody what you have in your arsenal. That doesn't mean you're going to get time to cut a promo. That doesn't mean you're going to get time to tell people who you are, with such detail. Like, how you're going to do that is by taking your training in the ring and putting it on display.
Yeah.
Again, that's not going to be the same opportunity as a Hall or a Nash or a Hogan to go out there and advance a story or any other initiative. But I think we as fans also want this element of wrestling to be appreciated more than it maybe is.
Yeah.
Or to have greater emphasis in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah.
Like, in nowadays wrestling, like, people look at like, oh, like, we're, not the whole sports entertainment versus wrestling argument, but like you hear about like, one show putting on 5-star matches in the other show, advancing storylines.
Yeah, that seems to be the big talking point these days between WWE and AEW.
Splitting of hairs with rhetoric in terms of like what a show values and what a fan values. But to me, I've been of the train of thought that a match isn't a 5-star match because of like how awesome that spot was or how deep that arm drag was. It's a 5-star match because of why I wanted it. What's at stake, who's involved, what Dean Malenko, for example, or Rey Mysterio is trying to accomplish by winning or by putting on their opponent. Though the story to me is a part of the star rating.
Yeah.
Not the moves.
Yeah. The whole package.
That's my criteria.
Yeah.
Obviously,
everyone's got different criteria.
But to me, I think I feel like I'm probably aligned with what's consistent in general by most people is that it's a more holistic approach to what makes a match of a good quality. You can't just watch a match by itself and say, "Wow, that was a 5-star match." Like, okay, well, why?
Yeah.
I want to understand that line of thinking because my thinking is, well, what's the story? Why are these guys wrestling? Did this guy do something to that guy? Or, are they fighting for something? Or is there something at the end of the road for the winner? Or is the loser got to save himself from, the disparity of whatever, so many other things at play other than a muscle buster suplex on the outside of the ring. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's way bigger than just the moves.
Yes. Oh, agree 100%.
And there's certainly obviously a school of people that want you to believe that the moves matter just as much, if not more. And I'm sorry, I have yet to come around to that thinking.
Yeah. Now, let's shift gears here for just a minute when it comes to the outdoor wrestling element. You said that this had a very clean look. You think something like this would be welcomed in today's wrestling? If you saw like a weekly AEW or a Raw or a SmackDown.
Definitely.
I know that WWE's been just kind of on a roll with the sellouts and they're trying to fit as many people as they can possibly in every arena they're in. But you think this is something that would be a welcome addition? Is there something Is there something about this presentation that could be altered or better in today's world?
Oof.
Yeah, that was a little two-car crash-ish.
I mean, honestly, I think we do get elements of it, and we like when AEW does shows at Daly's Place, it's like the closest thing to this.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I'll say that. It keeps you on your toes. It keeps your eyes attentive. You know what I mean? When you get to see a different look and a different feel to those things. Like we go like to in other places, like for instance, just as of this recording earlier this week was the Major League Baseball game at the Negro League Stadium in Alabama.
Yep.
Like they did the Field of Dreams game, a couple of years back. Like, so I feel like doing something like this for that like WCW did back in 1996 is kind of like a version of that.
Yeah.
And I think there is something like that would be cool to see kind of take place with some level of specialness attached to it, over the course of a calendar year. Another example that you could see in longer form was the event they did on the Intrepid. Like, what if they did a wrestling show as a tribute to the troops, like on a fucking aircraft carrier?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
didn't they do a few of those like domestically in the United States in like a
They did them in hangars.
Hangars, yeah.
Yeah. Again, it's just something that gives you breaks up the normalcy of arena.
Yeah.
Stadium, great.
Yeah.
That also probably applies to some level, but we see it a lot as well. So yeah, I think there's definitely a place for this, especially in our evolving world of media, where like an idea of doing a game at Rickwood Field in Alabama to honor the Negro Leagues is more about creating a television event, because television is looking for ways to bring viewers back to the television screens and not to the streaming devices as much.
Look at this!
And the end of that one. So again, like you're creating a product in an event that people want to see and that they would convene on, and just by simply doing something like this creates something different than what you're normally used to seeing, and therefore makes it interesting. And then obviously you got to build on that too. But yeah, there's definitely a place for this. Maybe even more now than back in 1996.
And Rey Mysterio with the victory, becoming the new Cruiserweight champion over Dean Malenko. Totally forgot that he won the belt here. Did not have any recollection of it. But yeah, nice counter there. Brought to you by Pet Boys, the Power Pin of the Week.
Already, the week just started. It's the first match on Monday.
Yeah.
And they've already decided this is it. This is the Power Pin of the Week. Nothing else is going to be better than, more powerful than this pin.
I guess so, yeah. Backstage, Steiner Brothers and Nasty Boys. This is interesting. I'll play the audio for this with Mean Gene here.
If it's got Scout Steiner talking.
Yeah, we got 14. We're at 15 minutes right now. Let me play the audio.
Pay-per-view Hog Wild. One of these teams will be meeting the Harlem Heat for the WCW Tag Team title, Scott. Mean Gene, I can't agree with the way Harlem Heat won the belts or how they beat us last week when Colonel Parkland hit my brother in the head with a cane. But if we have to face the Nasty Boys tonight to see who... Hey, shut up, fat boy. I can't say I like the way you guys act. I can't say I agree the way you guys look. But I do respect your wrestling ability. You guys been champion before, so have we. Tonight we're going to see who the better team is. Hey, I don't care and Knobs don't care about your stinking problems with the Harlem Heat. All I care about is me and Knobs winning that match tonight. And who's going to get that title shot? You've been down Nasty Boulevard before. You walked it. You know what it's about. I know you can fight, and we ain't backing down. That ain't an interview out there. It's Nastyville. Hope you're ready, punk. Yeah, keep talking. I'm not your... I don't think it's Nastyville. Come down to the dog pound and get down where it gets real nasty, boy. You see, my nose is to the ground. I smell him. I smell the heat. I'm coming after you, boys. I got you. Nasty boys, you getting away. It's just something ain't gonna be personal. All I know is they're in for one hell of a match. Cause us guys getting together, it's gonna be 4th of July all over again. We respect you, you respect us.
that was a mouthful right there. Woo. Coming up, Ric Flair, Miss Elizabeth, Woman. Is that Arn Anderson? Yeah, looks like they're coming up. Next segment here, or maybe later. I don't know.
That back and forth between between the Nasties and the Steiners was like if you were like at a bar and there was just like two drunk guys, like or four drunk guys arguing over like a sports thing.
Yeah,
just so
Just at your local VFW,
untethered to anything that is civilized. Glacier. This was something that, as a kid, caught I think a lot of people's eyes. Didn't really go anywhere.
You know what's funny about that?
I thought that was pretty.
So
badass.
that was during a period of time, or at least from what I remember growing up, that Mortal Kombat video game.
Yep.
You couldn't find it anywhere. Everyone had that video game.
Exactly
It was so sought out that like because of the violence in the game, that like you had to have a parent go to the store with you to get the game. Like that's how serious it was. And I think the concept was a victim of bad timing, and here's why. You got the smoke and mirrors, the hocus pocus of like the martial arts aspect of this Mortal Kombat theme, even though it wasn't called that. But then on your programming, you're trying to present the reality of the NWO storyline. Yeah. Now, had that been out like a year or two prior, maybe it would have worked.
Yes, absolutely. I would agree with that, and it would like.
But you can't knock Bischoff for trying.
No, not at all.
Like that. That to me, I was like, oh, that's kind of genius. Like the video game's out now. Like,
yeah, definitely. Probably a couple years late, but at the same time, it was still cool. Like for me as a kid, I wasn't like, oh, I need to see reality.
Yeah.
As a 7-year-old.
Yeah, you're 7 years old. Yeah,
stuff like that. Even stuff
I was
13.
Fucking,
giggle box.
Yeah,
is like something that's gonna catch my attention at that age. So
yeah,
it was all. But yeah, overall, in terms of the direction of the business, it was something that wasn't long for the new world of order of wrestling, I should say. Also, something not long for the world of wrestling in 1996 was
the Blue Bloods.
This colonial rendition of William Regal, Steven Regal, I should say,
with Dave Taylor and then the Earl Robert of Eaton. They had they felt I thought, you know what? I didn't like it as a kid, but looking back on it, it's kind of fucking genius. Not genius, but pretty funny that like they took Alabama, Hicksville, beautiful Bobby Eaton, and they put him in this group with Regal as a team, and Regal was trying to like refine him and make him more sophisticated and like give him a makeover. Like that was that to me was I thought
Eaton's a guy I definitely that's
take
a
your
guy,
pills.
That's a guy I want to see get inducted in the Hall of Fame. I know he's definitely on many people's lists, but whether he's a part of the Midnight Express or any other, even by himself, I think he's definitely a worthwhile candidate.
If he's going in, he's going in with the Midnights.
Yeah, I mean, ideally, but just in general, since he popped onto our screen, I think he's definitely I think he's definitely a guy who's of the honor to receive it.
Yeah, I mean, most remember him for his run, with the Midnight Express and Jim Cornette, Dennis Condrey and Stan Lane as the tag team partner. And that's how I was first introduced to Bobby Eaton. Rock and Roll Express, Midnight Express was actually the first wrestling match I ever saw on a non-WWF show.
Oh wow!
As a kid, I remember. I forget where they were wrestling, but it was Jim Crockett, Saturday afternoon, World Championship Wrestling. But if you want to see some good tag wrestling with him, not just the Midnight stuff, but when he tagged with Arn Anderson when they were in the Dangerous Alliance and they wrestled the Steiners, they had some really good matches, some really good tag team matches with the Steiner. I mean, I'm a Steiner Brothers mark, but yeah. Check out some of that work, too, from Bobby Eaton.
Yeah, that's just a guy who, like, again, just by virtue of moving from Midnights to Arn, and Arn's probably cut from the same mold in this regard, they're just they're great at everything they do.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like they're like the definition of like utility player. You
Yeah.
can put them in anything. In terms of just enhancing something, making something work, making something credible, believable, etc. Like those are guys who, much like Regal, even to some degree, is just like that as well. That's, again, speaks to what makes you a Hall of Famer.
If we were to make a Mount Rushmore of great tag team wrestlers, I think Bobby Eaton definitely makes that list because of his longevity to be able to take part in great teams like the Midnight Express, like part of the Dangerous Alliance with Arn Anderson. Even this team with Regal, they were a pretty good act in the the early days of Eric Bischoff's tenure as president of WCW. Bobby Eaton, I think
he's so revered too. Like Steve Austin has spoke highly of him.
Yes.
in their time together, presumably with the Dangerous Alliance. Paul Heyman speaks to how the what he was able to glean from not just Dusty Rhodes and Jim Ross behind the desk, but Bobby Eaton in terms of like being a manager and being at ringside and understanding so much about how to put a match together and
look at this nonsense,
when and what to do things. That to me is another part of it. Like he's just like clearly such a highly revered genius type of guy.
Yeah.
In wrestling, that it's all the induction would almost be for everybody he's kind of left behind.
I forget who once told this story. I listened to it on a podcast, but I guess they tried. I don't know. Was it WWF? They tried to hire Bobby Eaton as maybe it was Arn Anderson. I think WCW tried to have Bobby Eaton as like an agent,
Right?
And they wanted him to help the younger guys develop them and putting together their matches. And Eaton was one of those guys that like he was so good he was able to do it, but he couldn't explain to you how he did it. He just did it.
I could see that.
And that's one of those things, I guess, that kind of, I wouldn't say held him back, but prevented him from continuing in that role.
Okay.
Training wise, like taking the bumps and stuff, and that I think he was, I think he was fairly, more than fairly good at it. But as helping put together matches and producing them, Arn Anderson said, like he was
more of like a lead by example type of teacher.
He couldn't tell you, hey, I'm going to put this guy in a headlock because of A, or I'm going to kick this guy in the face because of B. Yeah. Like he couldn't do that.
Or I could probably see because of how just sound he was. Like, he maybe like he almost comes off to me like he could have been like a perfectionist in some respect. Like if no matter how hard you tried and how good you tried to do something, and even if it was to success, he would find something wrong with it because it wasn't him doing it. Not in an ego, way, but just like, like
he's used to one way of doing it, and it's his way.
Yeah, the way that made him successful.
Yeah,
that makes him. Michael Jordan being an example. You know what I mean? Like you can't necessarily translate all of the skill set to making something as good as it can possibly be.
Correct.
Whereas like a Dusty Rhodes knew how to do that, or a Triple H even knows how to do that.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like I don't see a Bobby Eaton having that would make sense based on what you're saying that Arn potentially said was, yeah, I could definitely see Bobby Eaton just being more of like a, here's how you do it. And nope, I don't care how good you did it. You didn't do it exactly the way it needed to be done. Very, I don't want to say OCD, but I can definitely see that.
Yeah. Psychosis versus Eddie Guerrero. Another cruiserweight matchup here.
It's weird. I know we obviously hold Eddie Guerrero in like a very high regard.
You about to set the internet on fire?
No. Well, no.
No,
I'm kind of a dummy for saying this, but like, I didn't see Eddie as this prodigy that we now speak of him as during this time frame. I didn't either. I didn't see Eddie as some wrestling superstar, even when he made his way into the WWF. in the Radicals. Like to me, I saw him for what he was presented, which was a good fucking wrestler.
Yep.
You know what I mean? With not much personality. You know what I mean? Not that he was like uncharismatic, but just we only got to see what they allowed us to see of him. And I think by the time he was able to show some personality with China,
Latino heat.
Like
you saw a little bit of it with the Chavo stuff in WCW when he was kind of bullying Chavo, and then even like LWO when he had all the luchadors under his thumb. Like you saw a little bit of that, but
it wasn't but
it was on steroids when he came to the WWF and they put him with China.
Yeah, and I feel like it just again and maybe it was my my age and being younger. I didn't look at a lot of these guys and go like, oh, that's the future of wrestling, or you know what I mean? Like I feel like I'm so much more concerned with that than I was 30 years ago.
Yeah,
where, like someone might say that this guy should be this or that guy should be that. I didn't do that here.
No,
but I also didn't sit here and go like this is awesome. Like it was just what it was.
You watched it, you enjoyed it. Like you weren't
or I didn't, and it was what it was.
Yeah.
Like I said, I never saw Eddie as a wrestling superstar until he became one. You know what I mean? It's a weird way to say it.
That makes sense.
Yeah, but like a Rey Mysterio, I did see as a wrestling superstar, even towards his end in WCW. Like I did see, but again, maybe as I got older, I was starting to see that more. But I just don't recall Eddie.
You're
Guerrero
becoming a little more sophisticated, mature. I guess.
Yeah, I just didn't I didn't look at these guys and say and kind of try to, book their careers for them. With what potential I thought they had.
No, that makes sense.
But it's interesting to know now that he was within wrestling circles seen as being that type of wrestler.
Yeah.
But just never getting the opportunity to be that. And that makes sense.
Yeah. I'd be curious to see what well, let's get into it. The Who Killed WCW docuseries that came out recently. It was on Vice TV, and there was a portion of it where they had, I want to say maybe it was the Russo episode where they talked about a lot of the younger guys not getting their break, and Russo was the big proponent of that. And I do remember that when Russo came in 99, towards the end of 99, he really shifted the shows to allow more of a spotlight on an Eddie Guerrero and a Dean Malenko and a Chris Benoit and Rey Mysterio and Kidman and those guys. Now, the question is, was that because Russo saw something them, that they were the future of the industry, or did he just want to showcase younger talent because he got sick of the old guard hogging up the TV time?
I think it's a little. I don't want to say a little bit of both. That seems like kind of like a
middle of the road answer.
Like a cheating. I don't feel like I'm.
You're on the fence.
Let's put it this way. He was very. I feel like very attuned to what the perception of what he was doing was. Mm-hmm. I think he was very attuned to what the internet was saying.
Yeah.
And one of the things that he was able to probably glean from what was being said about WCW was that it was this old country club of wrestlers who, need to retire or what have you. And how do you curry favor in the court of public opinion? You
cater to their
desires.
Yeah.
And that's not crazy. I don't think that's wrong.
Mm-hmm. I think the execution was poor.
Do I think he maybe thought they were the best or the future? Maybe, but not with any level of intelligence. I think he saw it for what other people saw it for. But yeah, the execution of it was terrible. I don't think he wasn't I don't know. I just don't think he had a grasp for wrestling on his own in a way that was going to do these guys any favors, especially in WCW.
What did you think of I mean, as of this recording, there's 3 episodes. There's a 4th one coming out, in a couple of days. What have you thought so far of the docuseries?
I thought it was pretty good. The latest episode about Vince Russo, I thought was like the worst one so far. I didn't think it was very interesting.
Everything we've kind of heard about him.
Yeah, and it wasn't. Yeah, and also probably because it spoke on a less than good time in WCW's history. I am of the proponent that WCW was, when someone says who killed WCW, I don't think Vince Russo killed WCW.
I don't think so either.
I don't think Eric Bischoff.
I don't think so either.
I don't think Bill Goldberg killed.
I think Time Warner and Turner executives. It was as Bischoff would say in the podcast, the WCW died of 1,000 cuts. Yeah,
I would say I lean more towards in that direction in the sense that like WCW lived to die. It was in a world of change, didn't know how to change, and no one knew what they had. No one wanted to know what they had. It was just a clusterfuck, especially when you look at why the WWE still exists today, why it has outlasted in so many different iterations, is because it was an organized organization.
Yep.
And say what you will about Vince McMahon and all his isms, and in terms of how he did things as a businessman, as a booker, whatever, but he created a company that produces wrestling.
Yep.
And I don't know, like, while try as they did within the day-to-day operations of doing that, they just didn't have people that helped support it in the way that Vince McMahon created a universe that supported itself.
There was no infrastructure.
Yes, it was just a shit show. I liken it to, and I feel like we've probably had this conversation before. Like we've both worked in numerous restaurants and bars and nightclubs and all that. Some places are run really well, and some places just fucking aren't.
Yeah,
and it's not even necessarily one person that makes that place, makes a place bad or shitty. In terms of like,
it's a collaborative effort.
Yeah, it's just. It's a culture thing. It's a support thing. Like there's no. That's what WCW was, and to me, also based on the readings of the Nitro book, WCW was really a pass-through entity. Certain divisions of Turner were able to take certain chunks of change and add it to their spreadsheets and their financial reportings, and like that's the benefit.
Bischoff had a creative term for that, the allocating the funds.
Yeah,
like he pretty much, I forget what he called it, but he pretty much just said that, like, legally they were able to all right, if CNNSI was losing X amount of dollars, we're just going to move some of that money over here. And while we're on the subject of allocating funds and budgeting, during this time period as we're watching this was 1996, the Summer Olympics were taking place in Atlanta.
Yep.
And WCW was, because they were seen as the redheaded stepchild of the Turner umbrella, all the production guys and the camera guys that are working these shows are like backup or like extras from like a temp agency, because all of Turner's it's according to Bischoff on the podcast, we're at the Olympics doing the coverage there. So
sense,
if you look at it, right, as much as you and I look at it when we're watching this, for individuals that don't regularly produce wrestling or film wrestling, it's actually not a bad looking presentation, considering that most of the regulars are over at the Olympics in Atlanta, as we see Kevin Sullivan, Jimmy Hart, the Dungeon of Doom, baby, with Gene Okerlund.
Yeah, I just think overall the death of WCW it was preordained even before Bischoff got there. It just was destined to never be as good as anyone.
Well, they didn't want it. I mean,
no one, and not that they didn't want it. They also didn't understand it, and also didn't want to combine those two things. They didn't want to understand it.
Yeah,
and it may sound silly to say, oh, well, why wouldn't they want something that makes money? Like, because they didn't want to try to want something.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, there was just a lack of effort in something that they didn't understand. That Nitro book that you would let me borrow was fascinating in diving into all that.
I read that book twice.
Yeah, I'd read it again.
And I think that this docuseries is probably the video version of the book.
Yeah. Like I said,
They even interviewed Guy Evans for the docuseries.
They weren't. It was just a. I feel like Dusty Rhodes said it, and he said it simply in the WWE DVD of the WCW.
The inmates ran the asylum.
He said it was poorly run.
Yeah.
It was poorly run because no one knew how to make this company money.
Yeah.
And that part I'm saying. They didn't know how to make this company money, and they didn't want to know how to make this company money. Mm-hmm. They wanted it to just make money on its own without doing a fucking thing.
Yeah.
And that's when Eric Bischoff had to figure out how to do it differently.
And the other thing too is that, for as successful as they were, like the pay-per-views, Turner Home Entertainment took a chunk of those pay-per-views. That was another allocation of funds. Yeah,
that's where that money went. So the revenue of pay-per-view didn't get accounted for WCW.
Yeah,
because it went to that part of Turner.
That division of Turner.
So, it was just like I said. It was just a pass-through entity that was only justified as being worth having when it was as successful as it was getting in 1996.
Yeah.
Once it stopped being successful, that's when
they wanted.
That's when they were like. That's when it went in hyperdrive.
Yeah.
Because the success of the WWF made them no longer number one, and it was not worth having number two anymore.
Correct.
Which is what was about to happen before Eric Bischoff stepped in, as far as we know. So, and they just put in the minimal amount of effort to, again, not the Bischoffs and those people, but the people that around it, the Turner people. They just put the minimal amount of effort into supporting it and wanting to understand it so that they could, again.
But that started even before Bischoff came on board.
That's why I said this was preordained. This was only going to last
for as crazy as Bill
Watts, long as it could have.
For as crazy as Bill Watts was, and we've all heard kinds of all the crazy Bill Watts stories from his time running WCW in '92. They were looking, in a way, to get rid of it, and he almost made it happen for them by his behavior and the way that he ran the company and the incidences that took place. I'll never forget. What was it? What was the interview I saw? I think it was Mike Graham, Eddie Graham's son, the late Mike Graham,
mm-hmm.
and he was working for WCW in the office, and he was part of the Bill Watts regime, and he told a story how Bill used to show up to the office, and he's, mind you, the executive vice president of WCW, show up to the office, and the booker. He would show up to the office and cowboy boots, Zubaz sweatpants, and like a Harley Davidson motorcycle T-shirt with like a fanny pack. Like, no kind of presentation of, taking your job seriously with that kind of attire.
Yeah.
And not only, you brought up a point how like the people at Turner didn't want to try to want it. He brought this like good old boys locker room culture to the office that wasn't really accepted, and because it was wrestling, it made it even worse. Mm-hmm. I think Graham told the story too that like he used to try to have like little takedown tournaments with like the interns by the copying machine, and like these kids, getting out of college, they're just trying to move up in the world, and he's trying to wrestle them and go an hour Broadway while they're trying to make copies for their boss's boss.
Where the fuck were you for the last hour?
Yeah, exactly. I'm getting my ass kicked by fucking Wild Bill with the cowboy boots on.
Midget with glasses comes over here, and I'm trying to fax something over.
And then I think the best one, at least one of the most shocking ones. I don't know how true this is because it's wrestling lore. They try to make things bigger than it is. But Graham said that he was in a meeting in Bill's office with Bill and like some Turner executives about Bill's conduct. And how like the wrestlers and even like the staff at the office are not really receptive to him, and he got up in the middle of the meeting and went on the balcony of his office and took a piss off the balcony.
I've heard that story before too.
Yeah, I don't know how true that is, but he wasn't fired for that, which is crazy to me. Like you would think that like all right, he just whipped his willy out, no pun intended.
Yeah.
And you don't fire him for that, but you fire him for he got fired for the comments,
the Hank Aaron comments.
Yeah.
Hank
Aaron
comments that Hank Aaron caught wind of.
Yeah.
about race or whatnot, and
free enterprise, and thinking that like he I forget the exact quote, but it was pretty bad. Something about being able to sell fried chicken.
Yeah, he could sell to whoever. Yeah. Glad he didn't last there,
Yeah,
you know what I mean.
But that was the point where they told them. They said, "All right, we're giving this one last run.
Yep.
Otherwise, we're cutting it loose." Exactly. And then that's when Bischoff,
because it had no value. And it had no value because, like you said, there was still the good old country boy nature of wrestling married to the
corporate America structure. Yeah,
the good old country boy of CNN and Turner that was becoming corporate America.
Yeah,
but again, like going back to all that, I just don't think that even as the corporate America could have embraced it and made it what it was or what it could have been, but they just never did because they just didn't understand it and they didn't care to understand it. And that's why I say it was preordained, because no one cared to give it the support it needed as a worthwhile part of the business. Mm-hmm. And anything that it was going to do, it was going to have to do on its own. Yeah, and that's what Eric Bischoff was able to accomplish.
Yeah,
which makes what he did that much more unbelievable in a business sense, because even while he was doing that, and even while this is kind of the beginnings of it, the rocket ship taking off, it's not like he got much more support. You know what I mean?
No,
like he was kind of doing it in spite of the shit show.
Yeah,
on the corporate level,
and the guys in corporate were like, "All right, you're making us money, but we still don't like you."
Right, and the other part,
we'll take your money,
but at the other point too, that's not related to. And again, this isn't why it died. Mm-hmm. This is part of why it was never going to live as long as it could have. Was because they're not the WWF. They never were. They didn't have that organization, even on the wrestling level, to make something last. And what I said on our last podcast about the Forbidden Door, and then what?
Yeah.
And then what?
Yep.
And then what?
Yeah.
There wasn't that type of structure in WCW, even on the operational side of the wrestling business, that the WWF had. Mm-hmm. So you marry that together with people that don't really want to help you maybe put that together on the management side.
Yeah.
I'm willing to bet Vince McMahon knew all along, even as this was launching, you know what? This is only going to last a couple of years.
Yeah.
Like, what's going to be their next great idea that they're going to come up with that's going to maintain this momentum?
Yeah.
That they just kind of caught lightning in a bottle. You know what I mean? Like, they caught lightning in a bottle, and it was only going to last so long.
Waffled him. Oh, my goodness. Right in the face, too, with the chair.
Yeah. And that's something that probably talks about... was that the start of the second hour?
Yeah.
Okay, that's what I thought it was.
And they play they do the pyro.
But I think that's also part of like what, people always talk about Vince's genius back here, and the Bret Harts of the world saying, "Oh, they wouldn't know what to do with a Bret Hart." Mm-hmm. That's, I think, so much of what WCW was. If you knew, you knew that they only could do so much.
Yeah.
And that they weren't able to do what was next or what was needed to build off of what you did.
Yeah.
That's kind of what WCW. There's a shelf life to it when you only know you can, but when you can't build off of what you've been able to create.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that to me is my very unclear, convoluted answer to who killed WCW. It was just a poorly run, poorly managed, destined to fail enterprise.
Yeah.
Long before it was ever good, bad, or ugly.
Yep. We got something going on here. We see the crowd standing up. Steiner's nasties going at it. There we go. Sherry and Colonel Robert Parker. Oh, yeah.
Tennessee Lee, for those who might be confused.
Yeah, for the that quick WWF run that he had. Scary Sherry. What was I going to say? What do you think of? We got the Steiners in the ring. What do you think of Braun Breaker?
I think he's got potential.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I think he's,
as our friend Dennis would say, Steiner douche.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't get why there's like that. Is it because he's a second generation wrestler?
No,
he was unfairly given the position of being a feature talent.
Listen to this rationale, right?
Yeah,
because I texted Dennis recently to try and schedule a time we can record, and he's watching Raw, and he goes, I saw that spot with Ricochet the other night with Steiner douche, and he's actually not that bad, or something like that. And, and so then, well, let me find it here. Let me find it here in my notes.
But yeah, I think Steiner is...
he goes, for the record, I always knew he screamed superstar, but he was the head cheerleader for the NXT 2.0, and that whole I'm a Steiner without being a Steiner still rubs me the wrong way.
Okay, that actually does make a lot of sense. I can understand that logic. I can buy into that.
And you know what? I understand why the name change. Okay, they want him to kind of make a name for himself on his own. I don't think there was anything wrong if he used the Steiner name in the lineage, but I think also they would then handicap themselves in some ways by giving him the name, and then he doesn't live up to the expectations. I think athletically, he has far exceeded the two of them.
Oh my God, yeah.
I mean, he's a freak of nature with what he's been doing lately on television. Freak of nature.
Absolutely. He's...
very reminiscent of Brock Lesnar's early run in 2002.
I would say, they're certainly positioning him that way.
Yes.
I don't know if he has...
Well, I'm talking about his athletics.
Yeah. Athletically, I think he's definitely close to that, that you can reasonably say.
Yeah.
Talent-wise, I feel like in terms of like what he could be, I don't know if I would call him a generational talent like a Brock Lesnar. Not yet, at least. But yeah, I think he's a nice, I don't want to say prospect, because he's definitely more than that now, but he's definitely one that they see a lot in, and I don't not see it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I don't know what to make of it more than that yet. Part of what I am enjoying current WWE now is I'm actually not thinking too hard about what they're doing. I'm not sitting here trying to pick apart everything. Like, I see it and I'm just like, I'm just gonna fucking enjoy this.
I've noticed that in some of our
era of wrestling.
I've noticed that in some of our conversations that we used to pick it apart and be like, oh, let's see if they do this X, Y, and Z, and you kind of have taken that sit back approach. Yeah,
just go for the ride, man.
Yeah.
Like, especially because I probably can't pick it apart or maybe guesstimate what this regime is going to do because they're so early in their... Like, I can't... Maybe I haven't picked out a pattern or a trend that they're laying down because they've only been around for so long. Maybe that's part of it, too. But in any event, like, I look at Braun and say, like, all right, cool. Like, let's see what they do with this. Like, I see enough to buy into it already, and I have a faith in what... who's behind him, be that being like, again, the decision makers they have now in place, where I'm like, cool, great, like it's gonna work or it's not gonna work, and we're gonna be rewarded for following along in some aspect.
Yes. Yeah. Like I said, potential more than a prospect. I'm liking the presentation.
Yeah, definitely. He has a spot in the show every week now.
Yeah,
that's gold.
The name, I could do without. I was really hoping for like a Rex Steiner because their real last name is Rex Steiner.
Yes.
So I was hoping for like a Rex Steiner or Bronson Steiner or something like that.
Braun Breaker did kind of throw me off because I feel like if there was anybody,
Braun
if there was
Breaker's
ever a wrestling name, Rex Steiner sounds like a wrestling name.
And to me, Braun Breaker screams Michael McGillicuddy. Just like it's. I could do without the name, but it's for a while I was not sold on Gunther after they changed him over to from Walter, and now he's Gunther.
Yeah, and I think and your talent is always going to overcome those potential setbacks.
I don't think those fireworks here are for Nitro. I think those are the Disney fireworks.
I was thinking that too. Especially if it's like 9 o'clock.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Yeah.
Park's getting ready to close. They do the fireworks before the end of the night.
Yep.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
It's kind of hard to do a wrestling show when that's going on.
Yeah. But then again, it's Ric Flair out, so maybe they did orchestrate the fireworks so that...
Oh, you would have to think that they calculated all of that when they laid the show out.
Yeah.
You have to think they did. If they didn't, then they got lucky.
Yeah.
I guess, in this scenario, but yeah. But
Ric Flair out to wrestle Jim Powers.
What did he do to deserve that?
Flair or Jim Powers?
Flair.
He probably didn't pay a tab at fucking Planet Hollywood and Disney MGM or, you know.
At this point, Powers wasn't like he was just like a I don't want to say a jobber, but yeah, a jobber, right? He wasn't.
Well,
really
a lot of those
anything,
guys,
right?
they had a lot of guys on their roster that were enhancement. Marty Jannetty, Greg Valentine.
Yep.
Like they had guys on their WCW roster that they'd work the Saturday nights and the worldwide shows and the syndicated stuff. But if they were
seasoned veterans for 10 plus years,
but if they were on Nitro, then they were doing the honors for a Ric Flair or a Sting or
but what? That's
whoever.
like a decent strategy to employ too, because you're putting seasoned, experienced wrestlers on this platform, and you're putting them in there with the likes of a Ric Flair or a Sting or whoever, and you're putting out there, in some respects, a safe product in that regard.
Yeah.
Like, we're not going to throw somebody, which is what we probably have seen more in the last 15, 20 years than before here.
Yep.
We would see them throw the likes of an inexperienced wrestler out there and go, well, that guy shouldn't be on TV.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, we need more experienced, sound professionals out there. And they had that talent to be able to do that here. They didn't have the private parties of fucking,
oh God,
of
they
WCW.
Fucking suck. I don't care what anybody says. They
I
fucking
agree with you. I've
suck.
seen them wrestle, and they don't deserve to be wrestling on national television.
There's a lot of guys over there that fucking
and
have
that's,
no business being
and that's what I mean.
on
Like
TV.
you didn't have for as much experience as they actually do have on some level. They don't utilize it nearly as much as you think they would. In terms of even just getting so and so to be a job guy or like just a mechanic for a TV match.
Yeah.
They don't do that.
No.
But then again, here's the thing: when someone does do that, like a WWE, when Dolph Ziggler goes out and gets his ass eaten up by
they're burying him.
He's getting buried.
He's getting buried. Yep.
No, guy, it's not like that.
Yeah, he's getting buried. Yep.
Yeah, he's a good wrestler. He needs to wrestle. Wrestlers need to wrestle good wrestlers to be good wrestlers.
Yeah. Ric Flair, Jim Powers here. We are at 54 minutes and 4 seconds and counting in this watch along. Kind of back to the Who Killed WCW documentary. Flair was not interviewed for it, and he was very vocal about it on social media. First of all, let me just put it to you this way. I love what Ric Flair provided in his wrestling career for me as a fan. Four Horsemen, woo, everything, that came along with it. The Ric Flair that we get publicly today, if he never appeared on TV, if he went into hiding ever again, I'd be okay with it, because he just goes out and embarrasses himself on a regular basis.
He's a caricature of himself that's just desperate to be relevant.
Yes, it's just so...
He will do and hawk and say and believe whatever he needs to in that moment to be seen as relevant.
He cried foul when he didn't get interviewed. Then they air the first episode, and he blames Russo, Bischoff, and Jim Herd for killing WCW. And then the next day he gets on and was like, I apologize, he's just a fucking train wreck. He's a train wreck, and for as much flack as people give, and I'm give Hogan, okay, for whether he's not truthful and the racial stuff, years ago,
the controversy,
the controversy surrounding him. Hogan doesn't go out making a fucking asshole out of himself like Flair does. Hogan keeps a relatively low profile in that regard.
Yeah, when Hogan comes out and says something that people raise their eyebrows at, it's largely like, okay, buddy, Andre the Giant wasn't
700 pounds. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, okay, like,
there wasn't
he gets his timelines mixed up. You know what I mean? Whereas Ric Flair's like, you're a son of a bitch because of this and this. And then it's like,
because you didn't push me in 1994,
Nick Khan, I hate you because you took me out of the intro of the WWE shows. And then and now I'm back and you're the best.
Yeah.
And it's like,
shut the fuck up.
Yeah.
Like
he is
and I'm a Hogan guy, but and that's why I draw the comparison, because People give him way too much flack for what he's done. And I mean, he deserves the from the African American community, he deserves their tension and their, whether it's hatred or contempt towards him because of what he said.
He said what he said, and he's going to live with those for that consequence.
Do I believe in people getting second chances? Absolutely. Fucking, what's her name? That female Southern cook, was it Paula Deen?
Oh, yeah.
Right? She got a second chance.
I don't follow the home cooking.
Yeah, everyone gets second chances. I believe in people getting second chances, but he gets way too much flack for things that took place 10, 15 years ago. And here's the other thing too, right? And I had this, I wouldn't even call it an argument, but I guess it was a disagreement with someone on social media about it. Because someone posted some meme about Hogan, with his timeline, and I said, you know what? It's not egregious for him to get days mixed up. He's fucking almost 70 years old. He's been getting bounced around in the ring for the majority of his life. Like, okay, the exaggerations with Andre the Giant and slamming him and, 100,000 people in there over, whatever. Like, yeah, he's probably bullshitting on that to work you, as he's being interviewed. But
all of these guys, you know what I mean? They all these people have lived essentially a half century of their lives, if not more, in a world of exaggeration.
Yes,
Hogan, Flair, Bret Hart,
Shawn Michaels, everybody.
Not just the physical toll that takes on your mind, body, and soul, but the fact that you grew that's your life.
Yeah,
it's actually not that uncommon. In other areas of the world where talk to live and work around people who work with children for a long time and see how those people who do it 5 days a week, 52 weeks a year, how they talk to you.
Yeah.
Sometimes they talk to you like you're a kid and you're like, I'm not a fucking kid. I'm not one of your students or whatever.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's just, we're creatures of habit, and people adopt the habits of exaggeration or forgetfulness.
Yeah.
Especially in this area, you know what I mean? Or just, they're trying to pull one over on you, whatever.
Yeah.
You just gotta with Hulk, with Brett, with Flair, with all these guys, because it happened long before these guys, when there were older people before them. Mm-hmm. This is it's a byproduct of a lifetime in wrestling.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You mean to tell me the person who steals things just stole something?
Yeah. Yeah,
You mean Donald Trump cheated on his taxes? I can't believe it. You know what I mean? That's...
Yeah, Flair goes through these love-hate things with certain people publicly. Bischoff's been more recently the one that he'd been targeting, even though they had a kiss and make up session more recently. But yeah, he just goes through these I can't with him anymore.
Yeah,
I can't.
It's
not to mention the fact that
tiresome.
Not to mention the fact that you see the footage of him when he is at the WWE shows, there to support his daughter, which is great, but I can't tell now if he's crying because he's happy for her or if he's crying because that's not him in that position anymore.
I bet. You know what? That's a good point. I never thought of that second part of it. That
he's sitting there fucking in tears. Every time she goes through the curtain and you see footage, if they do those documentaries and you see he can't stop fucking crying. He can't stop fucking crying. And it's dude, this is this is her 8th WrestleMania and you're still fucking crying?
Yeah.
Give me a break.
That's a great point.
Are you happy because of her success or are you fucking upset because that's not you right now?
The sense of self-worth that a lot of these guys have who've spent their lives doing it is wrapped up in doing it.
Let's hear this promo from but I'm not to cut you. I want to hear this promo from the Horseman, and we'll get back to that point in a minute.
Last night there was a lot of highs and a lot of lows for the Horseman. Big Michael, big win. Flair, now the U.S. champion. Things didn't go exactly like we wanted. Consequently, we don't get a title shot. But what I saw at the end of the night made me want to puke. You see, the Horsemen have never tried to be role models. We've never claimed to be role models. But there's a man out there that was his claim to fame, and there's a people all across this world that their very lives hinged on what he said. So what you did, I was one of those that with a vengeance went after you, and you know who you are. But it's not supposed to end like this. You're supposed to stand for something. You're not supposed to leave
and I'm like a thief in the night. While everybody's heart that you stepped and stomped on last night are going to rise up to bite you and bite you real hard. Ask me, I know.
Got a pretty good idea where that bite might take place. Steve Mongo McMichael, successful last night at the Bash to beat.
Insider, outsider, just like the term Four Horsemen alludes to, my friend, the apocalypse is on the WCW, and it don't have anything to do with anybody else but the Four Horsemen.
Thank you very much. Nature Boy?
Excuse me? Who do you think this is? Jumpin' Jack Flash? This is 5 times All-Pro, 5 times a man, show in the ring. And behind me, the Enforcer, AA, unparalleled. And outsiders, insiders, until you can heal the sick, wake the dead, and drive little girls right out of their head. Woo! Giant! 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 There's a new champ in town, buddy. One that can go all night long, right, girls? Woo!
Thank you very much, gentlemen. They are the Four Horsemen.
I wanted to bring up that promo because the impact of the Hogan turning bad guy storyline, this was like the first time that from my perspective, from what I seen, where they kind of had blurred the lines with like the good guys and the bad guys. This one event that took place in their company on their show and how it affected everybody, because you would see certain guys, intermingle with other guys on television, their characters, and then, good guys were with good guys, bad guys were with bad guys. But this was the first time where like the reality aspect of it was center stage, where, like I said, the bad guys didn't endorse this, know.
Yeah. There was a shared dislike for the NWO amongst the good guys and the bad guys, and that was like very refreshing.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. So and it only got bigger from here, and now. Again, it got you to buy in a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Bobby Heenan, Eric Bischoff hosting the second hour. I've never had an issue with, some people, nowadays fans, they complain about the commentary. They got the wrong guys, or there's too many guys in the booth. But I honestly thought it was refreshing when they had a first hour and second hour, combination of teams. I thought it was.
Oh, I agree.
Yeah. I thought it was different. I think even the WWF tried that in like '97, where they had like JR with like Michael Cole and Kevin Kelly, and then the second hour it was with Jerry Lawler, and then it just became the two of them, for the full 2 hours. I thought it was very refreshing having two different commentary teams. And I think they, in the later years during the brand extension, they would do that for the dual pay-per-views where they would switch guys off. Now they just have the same, Michael Cole, Corey Graves, and then, Barrett was on the more recent show. Sergeant Craig Pittman, along with Teddy Long, making his way down to the ring. Craig Pittman from the power plant, a Marine. I guess that, right? He was a Marine.
I believe so.
That was the gimmick. I don't know if it was real or not. I don't know if he was a Marine in real life, but going up against a guy who a lot of people don't like to even reference anymore, Chris Benoit.
Hey, well, he's here, and I guess it's more awkward than anything to talk about him. But
do you still feel that way? Like you can't like watch a match of his or have a hard time talking? Have I ever said
I was that way?
I don't know. I mean, I feel, maybe I just assumed because that's how a lot of fans felt.
I don't know if I ever really felt that way. I guess maybe if anything, I'm not going out of my way to find Chris Benoit. But if like we're watching something like this and he's here, I'm not like let's fast forward.
Let's skip this one, yeah.
Like, whatever. Like, I mean, it's like anything else in entertainment, it's gonna exist and live forever, and you can choose to watch it or not, and you have every right to do so. So it's,
there was once a podcast I participated in that about where they where it was like forbidden to talk about him on there. If I remember correctly, I think the individual I used to work with on this podcast used to say something like this. We will not be referencing or talking about this individual on this podcast.
But in doing so, you're still bringing the attention you are trying to not bring by just. Even
it just felt very like WWE, like after Benoit did it, and Vince went on TV and was like, "We won't be, talking about him ever again." Like the way he said it, it just was like, I'm like, all right, come on, dude, you're not Vince. Like,
yeah, and that's the thing. It's fine. If you don't want to, that's fine.
Yeah,
I get it.
That's your prerogative. Yeah,
you know what I mean. Like I understand WWE's approach. I know people think it's like sacrilege to like. But
exclude him.
What is the gain in pretending like it didn't happen? I guess.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. What is the gain in just business as usual? You know what I mean.
And that, if you think about it, there's
no gain to it. If there was money to be made off of Chris Benoit and WWE, they'd be doing it.
Oh yeah,
you know what I mean. They'd be absolutely doing it.
Yeah,
it goes for any of them. You know what I mean. And not to say that there couldn't be in 30 years some sort of reformed opinion that sweeps the nation. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
About this person or whatever. But the brass tacks of it is that there is more harm to be done by presenting Chris Benoit with any highlighting with any feature or highlighting qualities. There's just more harm to be done by doing it.
Yeah.
So it's just not worth doing. That's all. You know what I mean? It's not. I don't think they're going out of their way to not feature him.
I wonder if his son that's still alive is trying to get into the industry. Because you see pictures of him every once in a while. He attends some of the AEW shows. I'm surprised Tony Khan hasn't tried to make a buck off of that.
Yeah. I mean, for all, like that's part of like. I feel like when they did that episode of Dark Side of the Ring, like that was like we need to
end this episode on a high note.
Well, not even that, but like we used to always joke that like every episode had a theme of how Vince McMahon ruined the world.
Yeah.
We've joked about
Dino Bravo.
Yeah, like Dino Bravo got murdered by Montreal Mafia members
for selling cigarettes
because he had to resort to that because Vince McMahon let him go.
Yeah,
that's Vince McMahon's fault. You know what I mean? The Chris Benoit one was like obviously like the Vince McMahon is evil theme. I feel like entered itself at the very end. I think it was a 2-parter. Entered itself into they just erased my dad from history, and how could they dare erase Chris Benoit from history? You know what I mean? And now no one wants to see me, and like you know what? Like, you know what? Like that's not like, dude. Like that's you're. It to me seemed like again we need to find a way to make Vince McMahon be evil.
Yeah,
as if he isn't doing it on his own. Already,
yeah, that
you know
part.
What I mean,
yeah, like that part. Like I don't know how old that kid is. I want to say he's in his 20s.
Yeah, he's a young adult.
I can't imagine what as a young adult he has had to go through since the time. Since that tragic event where he's got to try to compartmentalize the fact that the public has this disdain for what his father did in the final moments of his life. Not only to mention his brother and his stepmother were also part of that ending and are no longer, with us. And as a kid, I can't imagine.
Oh, no.
What he would have to go through. So for him to have that kind of contempt towards them, I do, but I don't understand it at the same time. You would think that like he was like you would think he'd be like, okay, I get it. Like my dad did this, but like he doesn't want to believe it.
And that's
I guess that's okay too.
Yeah, that's what I mean. That means that's some sort of trauma response, I'm sure.
Yeah.
So trying to process everything. I guess what I mean is like how it was produced and how they kind of bridged it to him being invited to an AEW show.
Yeah.
Chris Benoit, or Chris Jericho, rather, kind of agreeing with and expressing a similar sentiment.
Yeah.
Like, because he also wasn't in the WWE at the time that happened. So he spoke like, you know what, I don't remember the exact phrasing, but he basically spoke to the same sentiment of...
That's not the Chris I knew.
Yeah, but also just the sentiment of like, and then they erased him from their whole history. Like, what's that about? Like, you know what that's about.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? Like,
Come on.
It was just, to me, like I said, it was there. We have to get our Vince McMahon is evil shot into this episode.
Yeah.
And the best way we can do that is by saying that it's a shame that Vince erased Chris Benoit from history.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Which is already a big leap to say is the case, because clearly we're watching him here on Peacock.
Yes.
And we did see him on Peacock.
Yes.
You know what I mean? They haven't done so much as to erase him, as they just have done so much to not highlight him in ways that they highlight other wrestlers and talent and intellectual property that they possess.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? I mean, it happened to Hulk Hogan as well. And even then, Hulk Hogan's still kind of placed in a different sphere still, but with a little bit more breathing room than before. And even Vince McMahon himself is currently kind of in a box right now, where I'm sure they'll revisit one day. But you know that's I'm not bootlicking the corporations, but like it's what's important, I think, to any of us is our memories of these people.
Yep.
And what we hold on to.
Yeah.
More so than what they want to give us to remember. I remember seeing things, regardless of whether I can go and find those things today, tomorrow, or you know, in 6 years is different. But I still remember them and hold them close, regardless.
Yeah. Sting and Arn Anderson here. One of our featured matchups on this episode of Nitro. We are at 1 hour, 13 minutes, and 2 seconds. Reminder, this was from the previous, this was following the previous evening's bash at the beach. So we're still in shock mode that Hulk Hogan had turned into a bad guy. Sting just recently retired from in-ring competition over at AEW. I know you didn't get a chance to see that match. I did the FOMO buy because I'll be honest with you, Sting's one of the last wrestlers from my childhood that is still, that was still doing it, and they didn't do like a, all right, if you beat me, I'm gonna. This is the one thing I'm happy that AEW did with his story. They didn't do this like, well, if you beat me, I'll retire.
Yeah, no, I agree with that.
Like, because I hate that. Like, it's fitting in certain areas, but it's been done to death. Whereas, like, Sting was like, listen, I'm done. This is my last hurrah at this show. Like, take it or leave it, win, lose, or draw.
Yep, exactly.
And the way they did it, I thought was well done. The video that they did, like, I watched it on social media earlier in that day, and like it was just a really good piece with the wrestlers talking about him. And they didn't have all the WWE footage, but they had clips and pictures from like New Japan, and even some pictures from like Pro Wrestling Illustrated and things like that. And the way it was produced, I was like, man, they got me. I was like, I think I'm gonna go spend the $50 on Bleacher Report to watch this just to see this match. And I was glad I did, because the show is actually a pretty good show from a wrestling standpoint.
Right.
But I'm still holding out hope that, like, I was still holding out hope that he was going to make an appearance at WrestleMania and back up Cody in that sequence of interference in that match.
Yeah.
Because of the tie-in that Cody and Sting had when Sting first came to AEW. It appeared that they were going to eventually get to Cody and Sting. So I thought that, like you said in private, maybe he were to come back and they could make something interesting for him. But at the same time, I don't think there's anything for him that he has to do anymore.
I think it ended well for what it is.
Yeah.
I think he left it all out there, if you will.
Yeah.
And the fact that he was able to get another run, he was very fortunate of. I'm not saying that he should be grateful. I'm just saying that, like, getting the run we did with AEW was like an added bonus, although it wasn't like anything super redeeming. It seemed more like just a fun thing for him to do.
I think also he wanted.
what I mean?
think also he wanted to walk away on his own terms because he wasn't allowed to come back in WWE
and I
because of the
understand
injury.
that, and that was unfortunate. And
Yeah.
I wish they could have, maybe had a little bit more of a changed, evolved feeling on his injury, like they did at Daniel Bryan and Edge, etc. But so for that reason, I'm glad he got to go to have that run with AEW. I'm glad he got to do what seemed like some. I feel like you see some actors just make really shitty movies after they've like nailed a blockbuster.
Yep.
And you go like, why the fuck did they do that? And then you find out like, oh, they were very passionate about that project.
Yeah.
They were very into that story about this, that, and the other. And they, it's something that they.
It was personal for them.
Yeah, and I felt like that's what AEW was for Sting, because it wasn't very good, but it was very meaningful for him.
Yeah.
And that's really what matters. So if he got that out of AEW and was able to go out on the note that was shown on that pay-per-view in terms of what he got to do with the Young Bucks, and his sons were involved and everything else, and Ric Flair was involved, good for him. You know what I mean?
It checked a lot of boxes.
Yeah, certainly don't need to see more if there's no itch.
Yeah.
If you scratch the itch, let it, enjoy it, man.
Yeah, I mean, it checked a lot of boxes, like, personally for Sting, giving Darby Allin the rub, having a big name like him on their programming, because he was still a big name. He still got great reactions. It wasn't it wasn't like, oh, they're not bringing out this old fuck again, right?
That's
like,
true.
It wasn't one of those, like these very smarky pro wrestling t-shirt fucking audience that AEW has. They respected him. Mm-hmm. They respected what he had contributed to the industry.
Absolutely.
Which I was kind of surprised, but then again, they're that kind of audience too that likes to. The AEW audience, in my opinion, they're like the smartest person in the room.
Yeah,
or they want to appear like they're the smartest person in the room, and so therefore, if they were to have not endorsed Sting the way, after coming in and being presented the way he was, then it would make them look bad. So therefore, they had accepted him as one of their own.
Yeah, I remember seeing, especially when Sting came in and like other ex-WWE guys, like there was this new evolved talking point of, well, in AEW they respect the legends. And they, the last time we saw Mark Henry, like he was wheeling around on a scooter and Randy Orton like bitched him out on TV.
Yeah.
Or the Big Show was made to cry.
Yeah.
Oh, in AEW, those guys get respect. Tony Khan treats those guys with respect. It's a job, first off.
Yeah.
Relax. And they're also playing characters on television.
Yeah.
So it's like to say that they
And they agreed to do that.
You know what I mean? It's to say they're not respected is fucking stupid.
Yeah, that's some dumb shit.
But again, an evolved talking point from a place where they wanted to see new wrestling. They wanted to see an alternative. But when the legends come in, the old guys, when the talking point is, well, how come you guys want these legends when you said you wanted new wrestling? You wanted a breath of fresh air in the wrestling business. Well, we respect the legends in AEW, and they treat them with respect, and that's where I think a lot of that evolved thinking was, where certain people are safe from that ridicule, because amongst that fan base, however they can just contort the thinking so that they don't so that they can appear like the smartest person in the room. That's all that matters.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They'll say whatever they need to say.
Well,
here come the big dogs.
Here we go. Hall and Nash, the outsiders, making their way out. Arn Anderson, another one that has departed from AEW more recently.
It's like,
not saying that they didn't respect him, but he was on Busted Open recently, I think, too.
Oh, yeah?
Said something about... no, Cody was on Busted Open. And Cody said something about, possibly wanting a manager, so everyone drew back to him because he was...
No, thanks.
Really?
No.
See, I love Arn.
I like Arn. I think he's a legend. He's a Hall of Famer. Like, nothing against him, but nope. I don't need to see Arn Anderson pretending like he's Andy Reid with his little play sheet and like.
See, I thought that was
too on the nose for me. I feel like it's just like, no, I'm good. I don't need to see it.
Okay.
You know, I just
Teach his own. I
can he show up and get his ass beat so there can be some heat dumped into something for Cody? Yeah.
I think
absolutely.
Arn said something like that where he was like, he doesn't see. He goes, he could see it happening if it's like a short term thing that like benefits Cody kind of thing, but not something that's like a regular
I don't need
thing.
Brock Anderson out there.
Yeah.
You know, putting Cody down to build him back up. Or
Yeah.
whatever. It's Cody's great on his own. You know what I mean? And say what you will about his run now. He is deserving. He is doing, I think, a fantastic job.
Yes.
He doesn't need Arn Anderson for anything more than just like a
one-off
shot in the arm to get a segment or an angle over. You know what I mean? Arn Anderson's value, I think, would be great to come back and be a part of NXT or training or producing again or whatever. I think he is an invaluable source. And knowing what respect Triple H has for him publicly, especially, I can't see why it wouldn't be happening. You know, I'm sure.
I think the schedule,
it's maybe just lining things up.
I think the schedule. I know that when I used to listen to his podcast, he said that the schedule and then the demands of the actual job itself was, what you know, especially like having to answer to Vince with and with the
all
idea
hours of the night.
Yeah, he said it. Yeah,
I mean, I gather that wouldn't be the same thing this time around with Triple H. And like, here's what a perfect role would be, I think, for Arn Anderson. If Arn Anderson assumed the role that Dusty had in NXT as like the promo coach.
Okay.
I know William Regal took that over after Dusty passed, but I feel like Arn Anderson, that would be like, he'd be like the Yoda of, promos. Because the guy could cut a hell of a promo himself. And he's a great teacher, as we have all known. He did that longer than he fucking wrestled.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Produced and agented and stuff like that. And for what that's worth, maybe that is something that has been talked about or thrown up against the wall as an idea. And maybe Arn Anderson doesn't feel like moving to Orlando, Florida to be a teacher on a full-time basis. He still does the conventions and all that. And let him have his little run and freedom to kind of do his own thing. He's been locked in for decades.
I agree. Here's Sting and Savage post-match promo after that little incident with the Outsiders.
I should have known when you referred to the Macho Man and the Total Package and me as three little dogs waiting for a chance to wrestle the great Hulk Hogan. I should have known when I looked into your eyes. But you know something? I made a mistake. But you made a bigger mistake. Because last night, you wiped out and trashed every single little kid. Every single person that was a part of your life that patterned their life after you. You told them to believe in the man upstairs. You told them to say their prayers and to take their vitamins. You told them to believe in themselves, and you know something? It's a good thing you told them to believe in themselves because they sure as heck can't believe in you. By the way, and last but not least, to put the cherry on the top, all those little kids, you told them to stick it. No. You stick it, Hulk.
Sick burn. Sick burn.
Very strong.
Classic, I'm rubber, you're glue.
These two men and their partner
Sticks and stones may break my bones.
got knocked out early in the action, so the two of you had to go against the Outsiders. Macho Man Randy Savage, you were very close with Hulk Hogan as I was. You were part of the Mega Powers. And if anybody got it stuck to him, you really got it stuck to you.
Mean Gene is emotional.
I get a message for Hollywood Hogan.
That name came in this early?
Tell ya,
Wow.
and what I want to do to ya. I can't say you're on television, especially here at Disney.
I think it was like a happy accident they stumbled on.
Yeah, that's usually how it works.
He said it, and Hulk was like, "That's mine, brother."
Or that whole Hollywood Triple H promo that Hulk Hogan said he wanted to use in 1990.
Yes,
I'm Triple H.
yes, I remember that.
Desert, brother, because it's really, really scary what I'm thinking and gonna do to you. Yeah!
Yeah, I mean, just to give some context to what we just said, Hogan, in one of his many tales that he has spun, said that he originally had an idea to turn heel after losing to the Ultimate Warrior, and WrestleMania 6, he would return as a bad guy with the moniker Triple H, as dumb as that sounds.
Yeah.
Triple H standing for Hollywood Hulk Hogan. So the fact, like I said, that I was a little surprised that Savage kind of stuck with that moniker of Hollywood Hogan literally the day after Bash at the Beach. I thought it was something that kind of just organically developed over time, not so quickly. It appears that's not the case. It appears that was something that at least began to enter the conscience of our wrestling speak.
Yeah.
24 hours later.
Yeah. How quickly? Here's a Mean Gene with the Outsiders sitting by that limo.
Continuing on, the surprise of the night we'll see a little bit later, just moments from now, right here on TNT. But you, sir, you and your partner come to this great organization, and all of a sudden, things start to crumble. But I don't think that trend is going to continue for long, my friend.
You know, Gene, I could have to beg to differ with you on that one. You know, I thought tonight after we proved ourselves, you know, WCW last night took a beating. You know, the fans took a beating because the Hulkster told them exactly how it was. You know, Hulk built professional wrestling. These people can't even appreciate that. He and I can. Next week, the third member of the New Order will be here. Hulk Hogan will be at Nitro. And we'll see what these people have to do. We'll see what the WCW, what the big boys are going to put up against us. Because last night, I don't know about you, big boy, but I felt like Mark Furman at the...
Jesus.
The OJ trial?
No, at the Apollo. I mean, geez.
Holy shit.
Had reason to be rough on you. I'll tell you, one man...
Felt like Mark Furman at the Apollo. My God.
Hulk Hogan, so many people so disappointed in your actions. I don't know if you coerced him into this or if he did this of his own volition, but nonetheless, it's been done.
I just want to start by saying, Chico, that this portion of WCW Monday Nitro brought to you by The Outsiders and Hulk Hogan.
I don't know what that's...
Remember that line, bringing up Mark Furman, remember that line in Sopranos when Christopher and Adriana are at like the late night, like, you know, fast food place, and they're in New York, and they're like the only white people and there's all black people, and he's like, what do I gotta do to get served around here? What am I, Mark Furman?
Yeah. Oh my God.
The fact that Nash just said that, man, oh man, that cancel culture all day today, if that was
absolutely.
If that were a thing.
For sure. Especially a year after the trial ended.
Yeah. Scott Hall still doing the Razor Ramon voice.
Yeah, they haven't been sued for that yet.
No, not yet. That was coming soon.
Yeah, it was on the way.
Yeah.
I will say, though, like, just even in presentation, not just here, but, like, there was a distinct difference between wrestlers in WCW and WWF. Mm-hmm. And, like, you look at them even here, and they began to take a new shape, but, like, they just look so out of place even here compared to the rest of the roster. You know what I mean? They're dudes. They're people. You know
they're not wearing wrestling gear. They're in jeans and a T-shirt.
And even after they, even after they came over from being Diesel and Razor and became Hall and Nash, like, they were very much like
outsiders.
They were treated as such in their presentation, and they were, again, like, it wasn't like they weren't characters. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like, they were just regular guys. They weren't who they were in WWF either.
No,
despite the Chico talk.
Yeah,
still they were different.
So these are the still shots that they're showing from the previous nights. This is what they've been hyping up towards the end of the show here. We'll play the audio. Bischoff's narrating.
Confident, and they have the entire crowd behind him. Here you see it. You know, I'll get right in Luger's face.
Well, all three did not come out at once.
But I mean, early on in the match, Luger got sandwiched underneath
Nash.
It's Sting. I mean, it was a splash, and then out comes Hogan. Savage was down right now. At this point, Savage was down, and the entire arena, when he came in and ripped off his shirt, everybody absolutely convinced. And look at the look on his face here.
They swear to everybody.
Nash is in shock until Hulk Hogan drops the leg right across the chin. Not once, not twice. And look at him. I mean, just drops it, and here it is. The crowd at this point was stunned. And look at this. Look at the litter in the ring. They were throwing everything that wasn't
Mark
nailed
Furman
down.
at the Apollo.
They threw into that ring. The crowd was incensed. And, you know, Hogan, and we're going to hear the interview, you know, in the weeks to come. We understand Hogan is going to be here next week, so maybe we'll hear it from his own mouth. But I'll tell you what, the things that he said, and the people that he said them to, I'll tell you what, I've never heard, I never would have imagined that.
Well, you know, he talked about all the charity work he's done. He talked about all his so-called friends in this sport, how he built this sport to a peak. You think all the years that I've been around and everybody else has been here, we just been riding somebody's coattails? No. The business in this sport has grown because of people like me and the rest of the people in this sport. Not you, Hogan.
Absolutely.
Not you.
Check the encore presentation. Tomorrow night, check your local listings. We'll see you next week.
And that'll do it for our Monday Nitro watch along here on Kicking Out at 2. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Going back, watching the night after Bash at the beach. And, yeah, I'm looking forward to covering some more outdoor summer events.
Right on.
You know, whether it's another one of these Disney Nitros or, you know, maybe even like those spring break Nitros. One of them Sturgis shows. I don't know. We'll figure something out.
Yeah, definitely.
But, yeah, had a lot of fun going back. Appreciate you taking the time for this.
Of course.
And, you know, summertime, so SummerSlam's on the horizon, and I wanted to pose the question for you. We kind of talked about different ideas and for some of the podcasts, and you brought up an idea. You know, we've done the build a concept where we've taken a WrestleMania or a SummerSlam and we've built the ultimate fantasy SummerSlam by taking matches from the past and making that one card. What if we rebuilt a SummerSlam? A SummerSlam in history that wasn't. It's not revered amongst wrestling fans when the topic comes up.
Okay.
Rebuild a SummerSlam.
Sure. Okay.
I'll put the task on you for this.
Okay.
If you can find a SummerSlam in history that is rebuildable or you think is worthy of being rebuilt. Then we'll make that happen this month.
Okay.
All right.
I can certainly dive into the long history of SummerSlam and see what I can come up with.
Yeah. Just one SummerSlam, and we can, like I said, we'll maybe rebook the show, I guess, in a way, or rebuild it, as the concept would put it.
Yep.
All right. So we will get to that shortly. Dennis will be back in the coming episodes. I'm sure he's going to offer his brand of opinion as he does with our nostalgic content. But yeah, that about does it. So I think it's about that time we put this one down for the 3 count, and we'll see you all next time.